All right, let's call this meeting to order. Um, let's start with the flag salute.
Of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, maybe we have a roll call, please, Laura?
Director Sisenya, Director Cross,
Here.
Director Hubbard,
Present.
Vice President Fortcroy, President Womack.
Present. We'll start with the public safety reports. We have a fire department report.
We do not have one tonight.
Okay, and sheriff's department.
They're not online. CHP is online.
Okay, let's move right to CHP then.
Yeah, right to the front of the line. Hi,
Mhm.
everybody. We had one crash to report that happened on April 5th. It was a hit and run off of Tapadero and Sombrero. From reading the report, it looks like a party parked their car, left, and came back, and somebody had backed into it. There wasn't any follow-up or any cameras or any additional information for our officers to seek any additional suspects on that. So we ultimately ended up just have a hit and run without any follow-up is what we call that. So that's all we have to report today.
Oh, thank you. Any questions from the committee? Let's open it up for public comment on the safety reports.
If you want to make a line, please raise your hand. In the boardroom, come to the podium. There's none online.
Okay, I will bring it back to the board and let's move just right into it for our public hearing.
Thank you, James.
Thank you. You guys have a great night.
This one here before.
Okay, public hearing to adopt the ordinance 2025-01 of the Los Osos Community Services District to amend and restate Title IV of the District Fire Code by adding Chapter 4.05 Fire Severity Zone Maps.
Good evening. My name is Kevin McLean, Battalion Chief Fire Marshal for San Luis Obispo County Fire and South Bay Fire Department. I'm here today to present the local fire hazard severity zones, which were released by the Office of the State Fire Marshal on March 10th. On March 10th, the Office of the State Fire Marshal published updated maps identifying fire hazard severity zones in local responsibility areas, also known as the LRA. The updated zones will be applied statewide across all jurisdictions. The district must adopt the maps within 120 days per Government Code Section 51179. A little background on them. After the 1991 Oakland Hills fire, Assembly Bill 337 required the State Fire Marshal to evaluate very high fire hazard severity zones inside the LRA. In 2021, the law was amended to include both moderate and high fire hazard severity zones. One of the most common questions we get is, what is the LRA? The LRAs are incorporated cities, urban regions, agricultural lands, certain desert areas. Local governments are responsible for wildfire protection in these areas managed by city fire departments, fire protection districts, counties, or CAL FIRE under contract. A fire hazard severity zone is determined by factors such as fire history, fuels, and topography, which influence wildfire risk over a 30 to 50-year period. These assessments do not account for mitigation efforts like home hardening, past wildfires, or fuel reduction. This was the map that was sent to us by the Office of the State Fire Marshal. We took the data and put it onto a map that's a little bit easier for the public to see. So this is the area here inside Los Osos Community Service District that are up for adoption. The State Fire Marshal uses an extension of the State Responsibility Area, also known as SRA, fire hazard severity zone model as the basis for evaluating fire hazards in local responsibility areas. Outside of wildland, the model considers factors that might lead to buildings being threatened, including terrain, weather, urban vegetation cover, blowing embers, proximity to wildland, fire history, and fire hazards in the nearby wildlands. These models emphasize the spread of embers cast because embers can travel long distances on the wind and easily ignite vegetation, roofs, attics through vents and decks. This slide here is an attempt for me to show where you can see the hashed out areas on the screens, particularly off of Highland Drive, or that would be south, where you can see it's hashed out as SRA continuing into the very high for the local responsibility that's in the bright red. Government Code Section 51179 requires local agencies to adopt the state fire marshal's map by ordinance within 120 days. Local agencies cannot decrease fire hazard severity ratings. We may increase ratings at our discretion, and there is no appeals process. County Fire must make fire hazard severity zone information public within 30 days of receipt and post the notices at the county recorder, assessor, and planning agency offices indicating where the map can be accessed. County Fire place those at the required locations. With the fire hazard severity zones come implications for development. Wildland urban interface WUI building codes in California, Chapter 7A, govern the design and constructions of new buildings in high and very high fire hazard severity zones in local responsibility areas. Additionally, new construction in very high fire hazard severity zones must comply with the California Code of Regulations, Title 14, also known as the Fire Safe Regulations, the California Environmental Equality Act, also known as CEQA, the Subdivision Act, the Subdivision Review Process, and the safety elements of the general plan. This is an image I was received from the State Fire Marshal's Office that would help guide local agencies like ourselves through the adoption process and lined out. We will have this on our webpage. State law requires defensible space clearance within very high fire hazard severity zones in the local responsibility area and mandates natural hazard disclosure for real estate transfers in both high and very high fire hazard severity zones. The district must establish defensible space. Well, the district has a defensible space program, but we just need to modify it to include the disclosure forms in it. This slide illustrates the increase in fire hazard severity zones within the local responsibility area of unincorporated areas of San Luis Obispo County, including areas governed by community service districts. As you can see, we went up substantially from 2011 to 2025. This is a slide indicating the parcel sizes in Los Osos CSD, but please note they are not perfect as we have multiple. They made it difficult for our GIS to go through, but this is an approximate of the parcels that have been affected. That concludes my presentation, and I'm here for any questions that you have.
All right, do we have any questions from the committee?
I have a question.
I mean, the board?
So I have a question. According to the government code, if we were to disagree with this map, the thing that we would disagree on is what areas aren't designated as high or moderate. We could only make more things of a high or moderate fire risk. We can't take those away.
It's correct. We cannot take it away. We either accept it as is, or we can increase it ourselves if we'd like.
All right. So our only course of action is to accept that, or just clarifying to be as clear as possible, accept that as is, or make it more strict.
Correct.
Thank you.
I have a question.
Wait,
We'll have a
it's
public comment
public
period
comments
coming
later.
up.
Are we done with the?
I
Okay,
think it is a good question. What do you know? Can you go into a little bit of the methodology? I know you touched on briefly of how these figures were decided upon.
They take into account the extension of the fire hazard severity zones. Our office did not create these. These came from Sacramento
Mm.
and viewing down. But the maps evaluate hazards and not risks. Hazard is based on a physical conditions that create expected fire behavior over a 50-year period without considering short-term modifications.
Do you know where they get that data perhaps?
I believe they take it from fuel models, GIS layers, and things like that.
Thank you very much.
Mm.
So again, just to be clear, there's really no way that the high and very high areas can be changed at all by anyone.
We had a meeting last Friday, and per the, I believe he's a deputy chief for the state fire marshal's office, per government code section 51179, there is no appeals process, and we cannot decrease the level
So these levels will be with us till death do us part, basically.
until they're reevaluated.
When is that going to be?
They haven't gave a date.
Okay.
So what's the state's intent with these maps? Is there a benefit to us?
So the intent of these is to base it off of hazards and to guide planning and building directions for these areas through master plans, things like that, to indicate these are prone areas to implement, to create or implement things such as, wildland urban interface, WUI construction, chapter 7A, defensible space, and things like that.
So it more
To re-
affects future building rather than existing building?
Correct. So if a building was to come in and do an addition or create it, they may have, if they trigger it, they may have to come in to chapter 7A.
Okay, all right, thank you. All right, any further comments from the board? All right, we'll open this item up for public comment.
If you're online, raise your hand. If boardroom, come to the podium. There's none online. Chris, there is no public comment online.
Okay,
Good evening. You have to excuse my voice. I have a voice problem, but my name is Gary Orback. I'm a resident of Los Osos for over 50 years. I've lived in the same house for 49 years come September 1st. And this raises some questions for me. Where I live is the area called Vista de Oro Estates. Sounds fancy, but it's but anyway, we border up against a 10-acre field that has been designated at some point in time, approximately, I don't know the exact date, 30 some years ago, or at least, as a banded snail habitat. So that means that it's under the federal government's jurisdiction, the Federal Fish and Wildlife. When we bought the house, we moved in 1976. It was agricultural. They were raising snow peas and other crops there. Well, some point in time, it was sold. And then the federal government apparently came in and did a survey and said, this is banded snail habitat, which means that they wouldn't allow even a fire break to be cut behind our houses for a number of years. We had to pester the office in Ventura. We need a fire break. We had to get a petition up in the neighborhood, and finally they relented and allowed the property owners under the supervision of the local Cal Fire, or what was at that time it was South Bay Fire, and they cut a 30-foot with fire break, a defense area behind the houses. But every year it's a pain, and I question whether that's sufficient. I'm not a fire science person, but the problem is many of the houses, including mine, that are one story, they're built into the side of the hill. So the level of the field, which is overgrown with mostly weeds or other stuff about 3 to 4 feet high, but there is some brush there too, but it's not heavy brush. It's mostly weeds and brush. But I see if that ever ignited in that area ever ignited and you had a wind, that fire and embers would come at the level of the roofs. And my understanding of fire science, which is limited, would indicate that's usually where houses start on fire, is underneath the eaves by getting sucked in and into the attics and starting a fire. But my question is, how does this fire plan, what are we supposed to do, you know? Is there going to be any input from the federal government about this? Because they obviously supersede the local jurisdiction. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Emily Miggins. I live up on Highland. And we were talking earlier before the meeting got started about the designations in the map. And I'm very nascently concerned and just with how that map appears. And I do know that the SRA, because I've hiked it all, as a matter of fact, twice in the last week with CDFW and then with our new Fire Safe Council focus group leader, Jose Torres, showing them how the SRA works, you know, on the map. I'm actually really good at it. My specific question before you had to get up here and speak is, you know, we paid that special SRA fee to the State Board of Equalization, which when I first got here, I didn't understand what it was. So Highland was split. So the even numbers of the street were considered the local responsibility area, but now the odd number homes, my home, Becky's home, are considered Judy's home, are considered local responsibility area, not state responsibility area. Yet we paid into that special Board of Equalization fee for I don't know how many years before I moved here, but I know I got hit twice with that, and I know it went away, but I don't understand the mapping. How did the state fire marshal like suddenly put us in the local responsibility area after I know I've worked my rear off to support not just CAL FIRE, but certainly you know, Fire Safe Council. I mean, I've walked every mile of that SRA, and and when anyone calls like CDFW to show them, and unfortunately, and this is a hard question to get out, so please don't overreact. Taking Jose through my area of the SRA and where Ron lives, etc. The first stop, and I didn't know because I don't go up there very often, but right behind my house, there was a homeless camp, and CDFW officer came out and I spent 3 hours with him. And then Jose, I'm glad Jose was there. It was a whole different outcome than if my husband and I were there. But the question is this going to involve also just, we talk about doing clearing and extra work. Are we going to tackle these issues of unsheltered people living in these highly flammable areas? And I know we have CAL FIRE law enforcement. I'll just finish. The young officer, great officer at CDFW was like really shocked. So Jose was shocked. So I'm just wondering if that's going to be part of the plan because
Thank
it
you.
needs to be considered. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Art Lindsay. I live in Monarch Grove community, and I've walked the Butterfly Preserve with multiple of your associates. And when the maps came out, I'm curious, is there a way, you know, there's a good amount of red up here, but is there a way to raise an area's priority from very high fire hazard to extremely high fire hazard? Because some of this area, it's all fire hazard, no doubt. But the grove of the Monarch Butterfly Grove is a torch ready to go off. And all of my community, much of Sunset Terrace, any fire along here will torch this. I think that's pretty obvious. Is there a way to prioritize proactive reaction to fix these sorts of things? To, deal with the most dangerous items first. Okay, and I guess that's my question.
Thank you.
Becky McFarland, 40-year resident. I live on Highland. And first of all, I want to thank Emily Miggins. Many of you may be on that fire page that we have on Facebook. Many people refuse to get on Facebook and then cry about there not being information. Emily has donated thousands of hours to this topic. And she deserves thanks. That was all volunteer. I've helped her with some things. What I have learned is the dysfunction between agencies and areas. We've got so many different things. I live on the county side of Broderson. She lives on the state side of Broderson, and never the twain shall meet. We've had some work done like 5 years ago. This stuff needs to be kept up on, and it can't just be Emily and I saying, can somebody get back there behind those houses? Somebody bigger than us talking to the county when a giant tree falls from county land right behind a little family's house. And they cut a section for the horses to get through and leave all of the debris behind this little family's house. I agree. This map needs to be changed.
Yeah.
This is high fire.
Yeah.
This is high fire, extremely high. Homeless people camping in there. They lit the library on fire one time. The Sweet Springs, it's all extremely high fire. You get a wind and it's gonna blow from Cabrillo Estates over to the Elfin Forest, depending on the wind. So to only put this part in high fire, Bayview Heights, give me a break. People, take a walk up there. There's a canyon where wind can blow up. Sorry, it's really upsetting because it's been many years and numerous hours trying to wake people up. Thank you.
I don't know that I need this. Hi, my name is Marlena Pedersen, and I live in Sunset Terrace on Howard and Inyo. And my question is too, it's regarding the map itself and how they designated high fire in certain areas, but left out really significantly dangerous zones, and included less dangerous zones in the high fire, which when you're a golf course right here with nothing in front of you but green and this huge open space, and that's not high fire. Over here where you have all of this brush, all of these things, that's high fire to me. So once again, if you're going to designate one little tiny area that I would arguably say is probably the least dangerous in terms of high fire, these streets right down here, one that I'm on, the Inyo and the golf course and Humboldt, and these are not high fire. They don't butt up against any eucalyptus, nothing. This over here, this is all fire. This homeless, what they're talking, all fire over here. This is all high fire.
I know.
So it makes zero sense. It's like they randomly just said, all right, let's just color. I mean, it really, I don't understand it. And it's going to make our lives terrible. It's going to decrease our property values. It's going to make it impossible for us to go ahead and get insurance that we can afford. We may even get dropped and have to go on the California Fair Plan Act. I mean, all of this has got huge implications, especially if you just single out one little tiny swath. If you're going to like designate high fire, please do it for everything. Don't just go randomly with a little paintbrush and paint these little areas just because, you know, I don't know why, honestly. I can't even dream up a reason why they did it. I can't even fathom it. So that's all I have. I'm just really confused about the way it's drawn. And I'd love to get an answer.
Okay, can I pause the community, because I feel like a lot of people are bringing this up. So this is just this map is the local area of responsibility, and that other area outside is a state responsibility area. It is also red. So, but that's not what we're doing here. We're just defining the local
If I may,
area.
go ahead and clarify.
Please.
Okay, the area, this map here is just showing inside the local responsibility area fire. So in short, that is where Los Osos Community Service District is responsible for wildfire prevention and enforcement and things like that. This area here with the hashed lines that I talked about before, these here are designated designated fire hazard severity zones in the state responsibility area. These were adopted last year. So as you see, if it comes down to the neighborhoods here, it comes back around and swings around. We did this to show this is what the map is adopting. We didn't want people to confuse them by coming in and showing areas here and arguing that. That's already been done. This section here is.
But wait, meeting it's been done when?
Last year.
So they're in the fire zone now too?
You're saying these areas, you see these areas here that's already hashed out, it's kind of like a different color with the lines going through it.
Right.
Those have already been adopted in the state responsibility area last year.
So they're in the red zone too, highly?
They're already in the red zone.
They're already.
Yeah, so what they did is they did the state responsibility area first last year. These are extensions of taking into account of ember cast, topography, wind, field, and local. So these area here is just inside the CSD. This is where we are adopting here. So these areas already are already in very high, but it comes back around. The reason I put this in here was to show it. I apologize that I went too fast, but it's an extension of. So that eucalyptus grove that you saw, I was reading some of the public comments that came in and looking at it up, and there's that eucalyptus.
Right.
After the meeting I had on Friday with the state fire marshal's office, they take into account of ember cast. So eucalyptus trees, things like that cast embers when they catch on fire will blow in. That was that last picture I showed. That's actually ember cast from the Palisades fire that someone sent me. So to answer your questions, yes, these areas already very high. This is just the area of Los Osos Community Service District.
Okay.
And somebody asked about the area down in here. All of this area.
I did not create the map.
Which is this
Yeah, yeah.
area.
But
Yeah,
can I ask, you don't have any input to the state, right? Why is that? Why don't you have some input? You live here, I assume, or work here, right? Why don't you have input? Walk around and go, hey, this area is bad.
so the state went through their process.
How do they do that?
They take into account of topography, wind, fuel, fire history. I can go back over that again if you like.
Did they come visit here
And that
in
I-
the dense fog?
Yeah.
Okay,
No, the
I'm-
answer is no.
I honestly couldn't.
all right, hold on. I'm gonna rein it back in. So normally what we do is we take like all your questions and then we do answers, but I could just see that there was some confusion. I wanted to clarify that one thing about the map, that it isn't just, the reason why it is how it is we're just talking about the local area, not the rest. And that's why those areas outside,
Let's get specific. Cabrillo Estates, what is the designation there? Bayview Heights, what is the designation there? Okay,
Yeah.
I mean, the map on the left should have,
but those are under state
I
area control.
understand that.
And what we're addressing tonight is local area, and that's why the map is how it is.
Which is why Highland.
the map
which
on
is
the right
why
should
the
be more
South
clear.
side of Highland Drive is not in that map, is not included in the red zone.
Correct,
We are in the state zone.
correct. I believe. Okay, so let's go back to, we're gonna go back to public comment, have your 3 minutes, but I didn't want that one
Yeah.
particular thing to come again. And then, Kevin McLean will be able to answer your questions, I think, more thoroughly. So let's, begin again.
Okay,
Thank you,
my
Kevin.
name's Judy Newhouser. I live on Highland. I'm just gotta say one more thing about the map. This is fair sand. High fire zone.
Next to the ocean.
This is bare sand, high fire zone. I'm sorry. I would say that the people from Sacramento never came down here, and before you accept it, you need to have them come down here and actually visit the area. This is unacceptable. What they have done is unacceptable. They haven't taken into account, as far as I can tell, relative humidity, because the relative humidity has to be pretty dry in order to really carry the fires. And we have
a relative humidity that most times is above 65%. There are a few days out of the year that that is not true. But these maps are not, yeah, they're pretending they're scientific and they are not. They need to come down here and look, and you need to escort them around to show them the areas under contention and to show them what it is they're actually trying to map. Thank you. Thank you.
Good afternoon, good evening. My name's Jose Torres. I live up in Cabrillo Estates in the SRA, and it kind of meets the LRA areas. A lot of discussion has ensued, and a lot of the clarifications have come up. And the fire marshal here is to impart the information that he got from the state. It's really the state. He made a comment that the state made this determination of this fire map. Now, according to California Government Code Section 51178, there's certain criteria in there that they have to look at. Okay. And in that criteria, I just wanted to ask the fire marshal who submitted that criteria for the code to the state fire marshal's office regarding our community and jurisdiction. Well, you answered the question because there was nobody submitted, nobody had a say in it. So to say that there isn't a resolution to this, in my opinion, is false. There is a resolution. We can contact the state fire marshal's office. You can have them come down and hopefully send a representative to meet up with our local jurisdiction. The authority having jurisdiction here is CAL FIRE, the county fire department contracted with CAL FIRE. That's one thing that I'd like to comment on. Again, who submitted this criteria? Now, don't get me wrong. I'm an advocate for fire fuel abatement, and these maps help us to abate those fuels. But at the same time, it has some consequences for us as citizens, right? I got dropped from AAA just recently because I live in Cabrillo Estates. Okay. They just are going out and dropping zip codes, and if you're in that zip code, they're no longer going to renew your policy. So these maps have consequences, they have ramifications, and we as citizens should be able to get the state fire marshal's office to come down here and do a true assessment and a true evaluation of what zones should be determined that. And so I go on record as saying that. What else do I have here? Back to this 51179, and it even says it in the ordinance. And like anything else, the fire marshal made a statement, and I don't agree with it, but in my opinion, I think it's a recommendation only, right? It's a recommendation. They're recommending certain things to be applied to this ordinance, so we're fire safe. Again, I could be wrong, and maybe I am wrong in regards to that, but I think it's a recommendation only, not something that is set in stone. And if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But anyway,
thank
I
you.
just wanted to impart that information. Thank you for your time, and I hope hopefully we get something done here.
Hi, my name is Barbara Boniface, and I live on Highland as well, on the even numbered side. And my question is, I'm wondering, did the state actually designate just 4 blocks down from Highland? Did they draw that map? And then just 2 more blocks down was the next zone, and then 2 more blocks down was that next zone? Or was that done locally to interpret the edge of the hillside and the mitigation? Were the number of blocks in those zones coming down from Highland? Who determined? They're so narrow, right? And then there's no fire zone after 6 blocks down the hill. I guess I think about Altadena and Pasadena, and where thousands of homes were swept up in winds, right? And the idea that only these few blocks, it seems like if we could do mitigation and raise that level back up the hill with some county mitigation of the fire hazard, would be better. And I would encourage you not to adopt anything tonight without having a more wide-scale public hearing. I just heard about this meeting 3 days ago, and most of my neighbors have no idea that it's going on. And it has such a big impact on our lives and our ability to get insurance for our homes. I would really appreciate it if you would schedule another hearing and then have maps that come in and show the colors of the zones all over Los Osos. So we have a real unified feeling of how we can go about mitigating in the future. So thanks very much.
Thank you.
Good evening, Dave Mayfield. I'm on Highland on the high side or south side, 47 years. 40 years I've served with FEMA and the County Office of Emergency Services, the Red Cross, fought fires all over the nation as a trauma specialist. And my concern is, and it's a question to the CSD, according to the color of this paintbrush, who's responsible for fire safety in the field behind our homes? It's a county easement, and then it's private property, and then it's county property. And the county, every time I call and say, talk to the CSD, I go to this. I have talked numerous times with CAL FIRE, and they said, we will not defend the field behind you. And I've been with Allstate for 45 years. They used this fire map to give me an 11-page denial, and they didn't inspect. They sent out someone who looked and said, yep, you're up against the field, and that was their inspection. And I've spent $80,000 since Christmas, and we have clear cut, hardscape, concrete sided our house, and we barely got our insurance this year with a writer saying probably won't next year because of the field, because nobody's giving insurance a straight answer. Who will defend the field? They're hearing from CAL FIRE that they will defend the home once the fire hits the home, but that they can't access the field. And so we're on our own. So if you're a resident and you pay for fire protection, the fire protection says, and I got this straight from the state before the meeting, if the fire is accessible from Highland Drive, we'll fight it. But we have no resources unless we have access in the air already to fight the field. And the field would go to Cabrillo, the field would go everywhere like everyone else has said. I've met numerous times with Fish and Wildlife who said, yeah, you can't abate the weeds because of the snail and all the other things we've dealt with. I helped create the CSD. We did thousands of hours helping to create the CSD. Fish and Wildlife came out and said, yes, you are helpless. And I said, no, I have a weed whacker, and I will defend behind my house, and you can give me a fine. But the CSD has to really dig in who's going to protect the south side of Highland. And it has to be more than a bureaucratic answer of, well, let's adopt a map and then we'll decide, because insurance companies look at maps. Thanks.
Thank you.
My name is Rich Rathbun. I live over on Inyo Street. So I'm over in here and we're getting, excuse me, I'm right here. I thought that was us. And of course, this has a big impact on us, but something somebody said earlier, and I agree with, where was he came up and talked that had the ordinance. You need to give more time to this. You shouldn't make a decision tonight when this group of people, like they said, learned about it 3 days ago. That's one. Two is, I heard a contradiction, and that was, you have to accept it no matter what. CAL FIRE's website says, so this is something that I think you all need to research. And I quote, local jurisdictions are currently reviewing the recommended FHSCs in the LRA prior to adoption. The final adopted zones may differ from what is currently shown on the map. What does that mean? Does that mean if you push back that maybe it'll get to Sacramento and we can get these adopted a little bit? You don't, according to CAL FIRE themselves, you don't have to adopt this. You really don't. Now, there may be another law that is in there, but you guys are advertising right on your website that that's what it says. And where I got it from was there's a really nice comparative map on here that shows what it was to what it is now. And it's over here in the comments that this is not the final adoption. So just something to think about. Thank you.
Thank you.
May I respond to that? Or are we?
You wanna wait?
All right.
Hi, my name is Carla Virgin. I live in Vista de Oro. I see some of my neighbors here, and I'm here because I have so many feelings. I am both confused and honestly a little upset because I don't understand the methodology that was used to designate these red areas. I am here to say that I have questions and that this doesn't make sense because in my mind, where I live, there's plenty of room for fire engines and for us to be safe when it comes to a fire. I moved here about 3 years ago from Pasadena, Altadena area, so I understand high fired hazard areas. I have a lot of friends who lost their homes in Altadena during this last fire. And when I look at my neighborhood where I live, it's completely different story. There's no narrow streets, it's open fields. It just doesn't make sense to me. So I came here because I figured if I have these questions, others must too. It just doesn't make sense. So I just wanted clarification on the methodology. And once we understand those, what's being done about it? Because, okay, if it's designated that way, what's next? What is being done about it? Thank you so much.
Any
My name is Bob Bergman. I live on Inyo Street. And I have two questions really. Is the first one is, what do we gain from this? What do we gain? You're talking about building codes. I think the county can take care of building codes, and I think they are stipulating sprinklers when people are doing a certain amount. So we've got all developed lots, except there are a few individual lots, I understand. But what do we gain from this as in the public? The other thing I'd like to say about the Monarch Grove, a lot of this has been centered around the Grove. I've sent letters with pictures. I've sent emails to CAL FIRE. I've sent them to the county. I've never gotten an answer from anybody. I've quit doing it because I just said, the Grove is threatened right now because of everything laying on the ground. It's a mess. It's been a mess for years. Nothing's been done. The trees would be much better off, and we would be better off if that was all cleared out. I don't know who's responsible for clearing it out, but it's the real threat in the Grove is on the ground. It isn't the Grove itself. It's and the third thing I'd like to know is how in the world does a golf course with green grass that's watered daily get designated in a high fire zone? That just goes to illustrate how careless this whole process was. No, the grass won't burn, but yes, it's clearly marked in red. So I think that's all I have to say. I don't think we're gaining anything from this, and I hope you're able to go back and that maybe you're right about we can appeal this in some way. Otherwise, from what you said at the beginning of this, there's no point in us even being here tonight. I mean, this is a waste of everybody's time. You know, you're just telling us, here it is, this is what it is, there's nothing you can do. So why don't we all just go home? You know, that's not a very good thing to be telling us. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay. Oh,
Some 19-year-old kid did this map.
Yeah, Peter Butler. My house burnt down in the Palisades, so I do have a fairly good idea of this. And it was 1 block from the ocean, and in a low risk area, kind of proving that these maps are not necessarily particularly well created. I think everything that's been said here, I live on Inyo now. The general feeling is that an intern somewhere in Sacramento sat at a website page and with a paintbrush made this and had very little local knowledge. I mean, it doesn't make sense. The sand dunes are not a high risk fire area with the ocean on one side and a 7 by 3 mile bay on the other. If that's high risk, then heaven help the rest of Los Osos, right? That in itself proves the intern who did this in Sacramento had never been anywhere near this area. So I think you have a responsibility, as you heard, to push back and simply say, please, can someone come out here and take a look, all right? This is an important issue, and I say that from my heart because I just lost my house and my worldly possessions. I went to work at UCLA in the morning, and by the end of the day, I owned the clothes I was wearing. I had a cell phone, no charger. I had to walk down to Target and get some underwear and a toothbrush and a razor. I've just done that. So this is not a trivial issue. It's important, but this thing is really nonsensical. It's just, you know, for an important issue as this, let's do it right, okay? Because it has implications. Some people are going to be hurt because unnecessary high risk areas have been designated high risk and losing their insurance and their value of the homes, and other areas that need to be high risk that aren't, are not, and therefore won't get proper mitigation and protection. So now I'm here, I don't want to burn down a second time, locally have a responsibility to get the local expertise to help this intern sitting at his computer to actually understand that no, Sandburn, the dune is not a high risk area. The golf course with watered grass is not a high risk area. There are other areas that are. So let's just get them here and take a look at it and redraw this map to make it logical. And then it can be adopted, and then we can do the right things to defend our homes. So thank you.
Thank you. All right, anyone else? Okay, I'm bringing it back to the board and now we answer questions.
All
I'm
right,
gonna
so
okay.
just to respond, because I explicitly asked a question about this before public comment opened. Yes, we can change the map, but the only way in which we could change the map is to create a stricter zoning. We can only make things higher risk. That's the only thing that we have a say in actually changing. So the point of this hearing would be to, one, inform the public and answer the questions you have about what this means, how it was established, and hopefully some of those questions were answered, and determine if it is enough for our community, not too much for our community. Which I'm sure is very frustrating for a lot of you to hear, but that is the situation that we are provided. I just said to inform you of the methodology in which.
Did anybody sue them?
I don't know. That's I'd imagine we would have known if someone had yet.
So you're all stamping it, drinking and going.
Excuse me, public comments over, please.
I would like to
We're trying to have a discussion here. We've had your opportunity to ask the questions. We'll try to answer them.
I would like to address, like, there's this assumption that if some 19-year-old know nothing who is in charge of making this map. I feel like that is an unfair assumption on our community. It is the assumption that just because something is, you know, well watered and grassy or mostly sand, that there is absolutely no way possible that can catch fire, which is understandable to think at a glance. But I have to assume that the people in charge of this has some knowledge, has some methodology beyond what we just simply see.
Yeah. John, do you have a comment?
My name is John Owens. I'm the fire chief for Los Osos and San Luis Obispo County and CAL FIRE, the state side of the house here in the county. And it's like it's been said is that Sacramento has their methodologies that they use for this, which Kevin has addressed, but it's the legislation or the ordinance of the law that doesn't allow for anything other than what we're doing right now, which is this public comment locally, and the comment will be kept here locally. It doesn't go to Sacramento. The state fire marshal is not involved. They're not going to change what they've put out. And I know your frustration. I know it doesn't make sense logically what you may be looking at. Like I live in Paso Robles. I live on a golf course. I live across from the 4th hole and the 5th tee box on the backside of my property. I have I pick up a lot of golf balls in my front yard. You have to really shank it hard left over the rough. But anyway, the golf course is high to moderate. And the moderate comes up, and in a quarter of my backyard is moderate and the rest is nothing. But the rest of my neighbors are all in moderate and stuff. And I talked to the state fire marshal last week about this stuff, and they said the legislation doesn't allow it. They tried last year to try and amend the legislation or the ordinance to allow for what you guys are asking for, which is the public comment, but it never made it out of committee to a vote, but by the politicians. So in San Luis Obispo County, because we've done this for the county, we just did it Tuesday at the Board of Supervisors meetings for the unincorporated areas that are LRA for the county's jurisdiction. And what the Board of Supervisors is going to do, and what this board may want to do, is they're going to be contacting their legislature, the assembly members and the state senators, about this and about the concerns like what you're bringing up, because we had people at the Board of Supervisors bring up very similar concerns as you have tonight. And so that's what the board's going to do, is contact them and make that a legislative priority to try and get the law changed. So when it comes back when it's revisited in the future, people will be able to have that public comment and talk to the state fire marshal's office and do those things. And the other part, and it's like, if you look at the lot lines and stuff, it doesn't make any sense, right? Like I told you, mine, a quarter of my property is moderate and the rest is nothing, and so they didn't draw these along lot lines or anything. And like what this shows, where this is all the SRA, and it just carried it in, into these areas. And then again, on the other hand, there's a really good chance that if they did do a deeper dive on this, it could go one of two ways. It could either be reduced or it could actually be made larger, and so, but no, they didn't come here. They did not talk to us. They didn't come and walk it, and think about it. This is from Oregon to the Mexican border, ocean to.
Every local area like yourself should check out the area and make the recommendation. They just do it on their own, right?
They're doing it like Chief McLean said. They have the maps, the GIS layers, all the, the computer stuff and they have the experts that do that. And that's how they've come up with this. It's the same methodology they used for the SRA areas, the state responsibility areas, which they did last year. And the odd part about that one is that in the SRA, there was public comment and we held public hearings and the state fire marshal's office was there to answer questions. But in the LRA, but it's not that. But CAL FIRE didn't write the laws. We can only operate, putting my state hat on, we can only operate within the laws, the ordinances. And that's what the board is doing tonight, is they're operating within the requirements of the legislation. And then that comment and what he was saying about the maps, they're not the final maps. They're not the final maps because exactly what was said. You can adjust them to make them higher, but you can't adjust them to make them lower. That's why they're not the final maps yet, because if you're pointing out some areas, if the board and the public wanted to add some spots, we could add and make it higher. But we've chosen not to on the county side of things, is like in Napomo, Adelaide, up in Cayucas, where the county areas is. We have made the decision not to add any more to what the state has already done. And I imagine that probably would be the same for the Los Osos community. But if the board and the public wants that, then we can certainly do that.
that this wasn't a finalized thing and that we, with public comment, would have the opportunity. I've got letters here from all our neighbors.
Right.
Is it useless to just turn them in?
Well, this is the public comment. This is what they're talking about, the public comment, and is to help the board to make their decision. But I know it seems
If
like
I-
your
if I
hands are
may-
tied. I get it. So.
Good.
They can't change anything. The public board.
Now, I understand the frustration that you come here and say that we shouldn't accept this map. And being told that the only thing we can do is by not accepting it is make it more intense, make it more strict. Locally, on a micro level, we can't change the map right now, but your comments are heard. They're public record now. How you feel, your frustrations with the process, your frustrations on not fully understanding how the methodology was decided upon, that's recorded and it will be considered. I'll personally promise that it's a priority of mine to have more local input on fire decisions in the future. And I do understand that's frustrating that we can't change that right now, but
If I could chime in here, the suggestion here is that, and please turn in everything. We'll scan this and we'll send it to Assemblyperson Addis's office. We'll send it to John Laird, our state senator's office. That's the only leverage we have at this point. I hate to say, yeah, it's why come? Well, this is why. We can't change the law unless they change the law. So we can bundle this all up and make a point, and I'm sure there's other communities going through the same thing, including the county. And if we can, that's the only way we can make our voices heard.
To be present and raise other concerns that could go forward to our legislators.
Well,
and invite our legislators to come to the public meeting on.
we're on a time schedule.
But they just happened last month, so there's 5 more months left there.
I'm looking at the government code in front of me right now, and it says we have 120 days of receiving the recommendations from the state fire marshal to approve them.
Still have some time.
How accurate is that? Do you know off the top of your head, either of you? Or anyone?
Within 120 days,
Yeah, like when did that 120-day counter start?
when we received it on May 10th,
May 10th,
March 10th.
March 10th.
March 10th, thank you.
And we're just
We have discussed in the past, like a few other meetings.
have to adopt it, so there's plenty of time. This, to be able to schedule a public hearing in a couple of weeks and invite in legislators so that they really hear the issues that people have, the concerns. Would we be able to do that?
From what I'm hearing, it sounds like a possibility, but we'll need to discuss.
I don't see how
possibility
we
for
can
that.
expect them to attend every community that wants a hearing about these maps. They're statewide maps. I mean, they're,
Well,
It's-
you're
but-
talking about changing legislation.
right.
What I would encourage is to have people send us letters.
And
Can-
we're not-
Right.
This kind of a forum, it's much more dynamic and informative for us to be able to hear common concerns.
And hardly enough letters because nobody knew about it. This is just all the letters just in a couple days. We only just found them 3 days ago. We couldn't even contact all, so many, 3/4 or more of the community has no idea.
Mr. Cross?
Yes.
If I may, back to California Government Code Section 5.1.
I'm speaking out of order, I apologize.
Look
That's fine.
If you look at that, it says here, actually it's 51178. California Government Code Section 51178. There's requirements for public review and comment properly. They have to be executed properly. What I'm hearing here is that a lot of the folks in this room didn't get notice of this and are now just finding out about it. So, in compliance with this government code 51178, not only were there certain criteria that should have been submitted to the state fire marshal's office regarding these maps, there's also requirements for public review and comment.
That's what we're doing here. I understand that not everyone know about it. I believe, as a CSD, we operate, under like Brown Act in terms of how we notify people. We have a website, our agenda is posted frequently. Whether or not that's handed to every single house seems infeasible. I mean, I presume those of you who are interested in local government are signed up for the CSD newsletter. That's how you get notified. We are the local government, and if you are interested in local government, go to our website, follow our newsletter. You will know what we will discuss.
We're in a spin cycle about whether or not we can even do anything about this state law. And reality is we can't. What we heard tonight is there anything in it for us? Is there a chance that these designations lead to more projects that we've been hearing are needed? The fire reduction. There have been people in this community that are doing a good job trying to marshal the energy to get these things happen. Fish and wildlife, there's a lot of hurdles. But does this designation allow us to move up in line for some of these kind of projects and funding and that kind of thing?
It's a very good question.
Okay, one more and then I'm gonna bring
Yeah.
it back to our committee.
Okay.
Or I mean, our board.
So, the Fire Safe Council.
Emily, can you come up?
So the general understanding, because of, I mean, even our local fire marshals on our group, Los Osos Fire and Emergency Preparedness, and I did host 3 town halls. People have been reaching out that are now retired, that have been our past chiefs, and that really do care about our community. They might not live here. But the good news is, yes, this should help allow the funding to kind of move forward with other agencies. I can tell you, I learned a lot. It was 2020 and working with our prior chief locally, and then with Greg Alex, who had bumped up into right, John, he was like under you, right? Okay, I just want to make sure I'm right? Because I misspeak sometimes. So, I'm sorry this is bumbled because I wasn't ready to say it, but, so he's been trying to keep my head above the water because I don't want to live through fire again. I too am a victim of fire, and that's why I volunteer for this community nonstop, despite where our chiefs, when they retire, whatever. So it should be a positive thing. I can tell you there are communication failures at the local level, not the CSD, and definitely not with the chiefs that I've worked with. They realize the urgency of being able to use this public funding to reduce fire fuels. And some of those barriers, I did a thing at my house without CAL FIRE there because they know what they want, because they are fire professionals and they are excellent at fighting fire. But I had a meeting with our federal government, and California Fish and Wildlife Service. So much of that SRA area.
Okay, this is going on a little bit too
Yeah,
long.
Okay,
you-
so
So like,
so
do
to
you have
get
a
it out,
quick
it's a good
question
thing.
or?
I asked the question,
No.
she's answering my question, but.
Yeah,
but
so
you could-
so the answer is it should facilitate, and it would be really great not to get attitude, because I wasn't ready for this, okay? To say this on behalf of CAL FIRE, but sometimes we have to push and grease the wheels a little bit with agencies and get them before us, because it allowed the funding to come through from Fire Safe Council to do the work in MDR, the first time ever in the history of that public land, because we weren't, the agencies.
So
weren't
the answer
taking
is yes, this should help.
Yeah, but
Okay,
it takes a
okay,
lot
thank
more
you.
from you
Thank
being
you.
informed.
Okay.
So bring it back to the board. So I kind of heard some questions. I'm not sure they were answered. We try to,
I wrote some down too as well, if you'd like me
Okay,
to try to get
excellent.
some of those. Okay, so the methodology, I strongly recommend going on our website, We have this called frequently asked questions. It's on calfireslow.org, right there under the fire marshal's webpage. But one of the things to answer your questions on, the model has two key elements: probability of an area burning and expected fire behavior under extreme fuel and weather conditions. So it's not just based off of every day, it's under those extreme fuel and weather conditions. The factors considered in determining a fire hazard within wildland areas is fire history, flame length, terrain, local weather, and potential fuel for over a 50-year period. I did have a chance to sit down with the person. His name was Dave, very nice man, not an intern. He's been doing it for quite a while. And it's expected. So one of the things that's put out is what happens if that golf course goes away? Those natural fuels, those natural vegetations are going to come back. Like I said, it's over a 50-year period. I'm not agreeing. I'm just repeating what they're saying. Is one of the things they came back and said, because my question is in the Avila Beach Golf Course during the SRA got increased with the gas. But that's one of the things they're saying. The Ember cast took into account a lot. And that's one of the things they saw in the Altadena fire. They saw on the Camp fire. And the maps were going to be updated. They actually delayed the map process. We were supposed to get these back in January, February. They actually delayed the map process because of the fires down south. So I hope that covers your questions on some of the things that was looked at. Government Code 5179. I can read it verbatim for you if you'd like, but it does not allow for us. It says 51179. A local agency under parent 3, a local agency shall not decrease the level of fire hazard severity zone as identified by the state fire marshal for any area within the jurisdiction of the local agency, and in exercising its discretion pursuant to paragraph 2, may only increase the level of fire hazard severity zones as identified by the state fire marshal for any area within the jurisdiction. I have also have a follow-up email from Deputy Director Jim McDougall of the State Fire Marshal's Office, and he says the government code does not allow for an appeal of recommendation by the State Fire Marshal's Office. Government Code 5178 is I'll read the section. The State Fire Marshal shall identify areas in the state as moderate, high, and very high hazard zones based on consistent statewide criteria and based on the severity of fire hazards that is expected to prevail in those areas. Moderate, high, and very high fire hazard severity zones shall be based on fuel loading, slope, weather, and other relevant factors, including areas where winds have been identified by the Office of the State Fire Marshal as a major cause of wildfire spread. So the Monarch Grove, I'm assuming it's because of the areas around it with the Ember cast if the winds were to take it. Sure.
Before we move on. Chair, just make one additional comment regarding 51178. That's the part of the law that a number of people tried to amend and that was unsuccessful, was referred to earlier. And it says that it's got to be, these findings are based on consistent statewide criteria. A lot of folks think that these determinations should be maybe made based on local criteria. And so if people want to provide specific input to a legislator, that's a really specific change that could be made that could help this process, which is changing those words statewide criteria to local criteria, which is kind of what people are raising tonight. So that's a really specific ask, if you will, that folks could contribute to this process.
Thank you.
Oh, no. Thank you for adding that.
No, we're on the answer part right now. Thank you.
One of the questions was, can we make it higher than very high? No, that'd be up to the State Fire Marshal's Office, and we don't know the criteria based off of that. So the answer is no.
Better to make it like bigger for our community rather than less.
I think if you have further questions, you can
I'll be
can call
available
in.
afterwards.
Yes,
for
talk
questions.
afterwards.
Yeah, I'll be making myself available.
Increasing the very high risk is something that we are able to do, if I'm understanding things correctly.
I thought it was taken from the very high to even higher than very high. There's nothing higher than very high from their moderation.
That I understand, but
okay.
Oh, there's no
Assessing
extreme.
more things as
What's that?
high.
There's no extreme.
Exactly. Yeah. That's what I took one of the questions. One of the benefits. So there's communities that do not have weed abatement. Do not have any type of hazard abatement ordinance. This is government code sections will mandate that they do that now. You have to do for the areas that aren't in the SRA that come down. And the county's one of them. The county we're working on a hazard ordinance now. The SRA fee, I can't comment on the SRA fee because that happened before my time as the fire marshal, even in being in there. I do know it went away based off of something else. And someone made a question on the lines coming down every 2 feet, every 2 blocks or so. We did not create those lines. That was an account from the state fire marshal's office. The maps got sent to me. We came in and I started reviewing the maps, and I reached out to Ron, and the map here, I accept responsibility for not putting in the state because I didn't want to confuse people on what is being adopted and not. I wanted to keep it to general the area of where it was being adopted. And that's why I put that slide in here, is to show that is the extension of the state responsibility area coming in. And I hope I answered everyone's questions. If not, please let me know.
I heard a question about who's responsible for fire abatement behind the homes.
Depends on the jurisdiction. So inside the Los Osos Community Service District, you have a weed abatement ordinance, if you will, and that the fire stations go out and do. Outside of that, the county itself, as of right now, does not have a hazard abatement ordinance. It's being drafted and worked on as we speak. Now, the person responsible of the property is the one that should be, in my opinion, should be the one responsible for abating it, the owner. But I would leave that to.
I had another question about tackling the homeless issue. I do know that people kind of report homeless behind there because there have been instances where they start fires.
It's the unhoused is a definitely, an area throughout the whole state that it's in there. But the fire hazard severity zones do not take into account for that. I mean, they do, but being a fire hazard. But I think that would come down to trespass, maybe a possible law enforcement issue.
And I think I heard, is there a way to prioritize the very high areas first? The being proactive about the
That kind of gets back to the question I had earlier, the benefits to
right.
the different rankings, and do they elevate you in stature in terms of grant money? And we kind of heard yes, I think is kind of.
I think someone said, they mentioned that with the defensible space out there. So one of the benefits, although, is that now these areas are identified, now with the planning and building moving forward, any new construction, anything, new homes getting put in, they're going to have their boxed in eaves. They're going to have that new higher construction that'll be able to handle that defensible space or the impingement of embers coming in on it. So that is a positive, because if that home doesn't catch fire, which could stop from the ignition to structure coming on. So and like I said before, there is a weed abatement ordinance, a indefensible space inspection that is required.
Yeah, I heard that for the Paradise Fire, the #1 factor of whether your house burned down was whether your neighbor's house burned down. So having neighbors that have more fire resistant homes is a benefit to everyone behind.
And I put this on there, it was from the Palisades, that this is Embercast that was taken a photo of, and it's one of the main things.
I did want to talk to a couple of things that were brought up about the actual monarch grove, the monarch butterfly grove, the eucalyptus trees. There, I did a walk around with the CAL FIRE Forestry Group and the county. That is a county area, responsibility area there. And there's plans to get in there and do the litter and trim up of that grove. It just hasn't happened yet. I don't know if funding's the issue or what, but there's definitely something in the books on that. I also wanted to say, after 6 years of working with U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service on our fire breaks around, of Highland, Cabrillo Estates, up in Bayview Heights, we had a very great meeting about 3 weeks ago with U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, like I said, and they were in agreement working with CAL FIRE Forestry Group to create a zone area where, if you're up where you have houses and wildland, a zone that could have more treatment, and then as you move out into the wildland area, less and less. But we're making progress. Emily Levin and Deb Kirkland from U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service are writing up a plan right now. And I'll be working with CAL FIRE. So we're finally making some progress to get around the snails, Moro manzanita, and some of the other endangered species.
All right, thank you. So, I hear your concerns about not having enough time, but I'm not sure that it would change what we do here, but I would encourage you to invite your neighbors to write letters and then we can forward that on. I think that, and then you can have more people have a, comment. If you want to come to the next meeting, you can talk on, things not on the agenda. I mean, you can come back and talk about it if you want to.
I do like the suggestion, though, that we emphasize the switch from state criteria to local criteria. That's one positive thing that can come out of the letter writing campaign, and that we can lean on our elected representatives to change.
If you write a letter, I would write one with you. I will write one with you. Just a couple of notes. I heard, and I'm about done moving on. I heard some frustrations about the way we inform the public about what we discuss at meetings. I want to know more about that. After the meeting, talk to me or email me. I want to know what your frustrations were with learning about the meeting, how you learned about your meeting. I want as much public input as possible. So I want to know what issues you face and how do you think it would be better. I'll work with you on that. And second, I think it's, pardon my language, I think it's a bit fucked up how insurance companies just drop people in the most high risk areas. That's absolutely absurd to me. That seems unfair and incredibly unjust. And I wanted to specifically emphasize that. But no. Yeah. We can't change nature. We can't say, oh, this is not a high risk area just to keep your insurance. That's sucks. That absolutely sucks.
Tom.
I'm frustrated with you. I apologize for getting heated there, but I just wanted to acknowledge that injustice. But it's beyond what we can do. But I'm with you on that. Anyway.
Did they ever change the map 10 years from now, 20 years from now? They always stay the same forever now?
No, they changed the maps. I think this is what we had in 2011. And they changed.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's the reality. That's the reality.
And when's
Yep.
the last time we had a big fire here in Los Osos? Did we ever?
Don't invite it. So I did hear in LoCac, we had someone come speak about fires. I forget who, but like, we don't have Santa Ana's, but we do have Santa Lucia's. We do get winds. They're not as severe, but I mean, I don't know that we should think that it can't happen to us. I don't think that's a smart way to think about it.
It can happen. We've never, so far as I know, big winds and fire, because in the summertime, we're usually overcast and foggy and dew and, you know.
We're doing something right then.
Everywhere else around the country is burning and we're doing fine.
Gary?
We had a huge fire.
Oh, that's right.
Like
2011.
And that's what they're, you know, as you get one going in Montana, the Oro, pretty soon it's coming over the ridge and down. If you have a conditions,
Yeah.
but they had a huge one that got out of control for, they were able to stop it.
That was supposed to be a controlled burn and it became an uncontrolled burn and it totally burned up. Anyway, well, I'm getting off topic. So, yeah, it could happen here. All right. How do we move along?
Well, there is no point in delaying this
I agree.
unless we're gonna,
Do we think it should be, if more things should be designated as higher risk?
no, I'm not ready.
I don't want to do that either.
I'm not ready to do that. No. The impact of this change is going to be severe enough on the community. No, I'm ready to move that the board adopt on second reading by title only ordinance 2025-01, amending Title 4 of the district's code as presented.
I'll second it.
we're not writing to our legislators anymore?
Oh, no,
absolutely right.
we
They're
will.
Going to do that.
Bring those letters in.
Again, this is a very micro issue. Writing to your legislators changes things for the future. Prevent something like this from happening again.
You can still come talk to us next month if you so desire. It's fine. I mean, there's a section for items not on the agenda. So you're always welcome. I'm actually very glad to see people be engaged.
Absolutely.
Roll call vote.
Yes.
So, okay,
Roll call. Director Sisenia,
Yes.
Director Cross,
Yes.
Director Hubbard,
Yes.
President Womack.
Yes. Right, thank you. General action items. Fiscal year 2025 preliminary budget review. No one wants to stick around for the budget?
All right, we're gonna increase fire. I'm kidding.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Kevin, thank you very much for speaking with us
Oh,
today.
yes, I'm sorry.
Okay, we're going to shift gears here, talk about budget. Again, oops, stay there. There we go. Just a quick overview of how we've set the budget documents up in the past. And again, this is the preliminary budget. We'll be back in June. Final approvals based on comments made and decisions made tonight. So we go through the major requests, what those requests cost, and then we provide a summary table that really helps visualize what we're talking about within all the numbers. I did want to point out that we had our advisory committees look at this. UAC reviewed the 500 and 800 funds, 500 and 800 budgets and recommended approval on those budgets. FAC reviewed all the funds at their last meeting and recommended approval to the board as well. So one of the first decisions here, usually I put the Zone A allocations up at the front here, but I thought it'd be better to go through the budgets and make that decision at the end.
See where the needs are.
Right, see where the needs are. But I did want to point out that I'm making a recommendation that we change the cost allocations a little bit for this year. Here's a better way to look at it. The current allocations are on the top line, the proposed. The rationale behind this is that a lot of our other funds have demanded quite a bit of our time, both mine and Laura's in administration. So, but we also understand some of the limitations that budgets have for paying. So this is what I thought was a fair allocation, reallocation of the cost. Increasing fire by 2% because we still have a long ways to go with that budget. Decreasing water because they've been paying the lion's share of the cost allocation through the years. Solid waste took a lot of time this last year, and we got one more year to go as we move into the new rate setting process. So I thought an adjustment there was warranted. Parks and Rec, of course, is a huge effort right now, which will carry over into next year. And then drainage, just a small portion again, because recognizing the ability for that fund to pay and that we're still trying to build that one back up. I'm going to stop here just so we can talk about this as a board real quick. And if there's any thoughts by the board on how we are moving, I'm recommending moving the allocations around.
My thought is it looks good to me. I like what you've chosen.
Okay, if I see a bunch of
You
nodding
should
heads.
know better than anyone where you spent your time.
Well, again, it's to recognize that has been a shift in workload, and I don't want our water customers paying for.
Given the conversation we just had, maybe we should put more on fire.
Well, let's talk about the fire budget when we get there. So let's just jump into each of the funds. Fund 100 administration, our major requests are increase in personnel costs related to COLAs for our admin clerk. That 3% is per the SLOCIA contract. Our administrative services manager and general manager of a 2.5% rate wage increase. There are increases in general employee costs such as medical and retirement contributions and increased insurance costs. What this means dollar wise is about a $12,000 cost in personnel. Service and supplies increases by about $4,600. And then the overall budget increase is 16,600, which is about a 2.2% increase over last year. And given where inflation's at, that's right in the ballpark. Any questions about Fund 100?
Don't see any.
Okay. And then here's our overview. Funds 200 and 400, we don't really need to spend any time on. The increase you're seeing here is just from the increase in the admin budget and that cost allocation carrying across. So unless there's some desire to talk about Bay Ridge Estates, it's pretty status quo for our lighting district. Fire, here we go. This is the one that's the most interesting of them all. There's a significant increase in services and supplies because that's where our Schedule A charges show up in our contract services. We did do an exercise in decreasing what we could within the budget, and I'll show you those in a minute. The CAL FIRE increase was by over $700,000 or 25% over last year. And this will be the first time that we're running a deficit, which I'll show you here in just a second. The estimated deficit, this has changed a little bit for a couple of reasons. One, we at finance, we discovered an error in one of our columns, and so there's a $4,000 increase in one of our line items. But what I did here, and you'll see on this slide, this number included Zone A money from last year. So I'll move on and I'll show you what I'm talking about. Oh, real quick, this is just a comparison of what our current fiscal year Schedule A compared to the proposed Schedule A for next year. And that's where you can see the $700,000 difference. I can't hear it over here. Thank you, Ashley.
Yeah, wow.
Sorry about that.
Looks like we need an increase in a office budget.
The countywide overhead is the other one of our other big things. That number you can see on the right hand on the 2025-26, $222,000 versus $126,000 for this year. So we're seeing a big bump in the countywide overhead. And that's not related to the CAL FIRE charges. We did decrease services and supplies by about $51,000 to try to minimize the impact of these increases. We are sticking with our reserve contribution. That was per our recently revised reserve policy changes. And we are, and also includes that transfer amount. So with that, we can skip this and look at this. This is an easier way to look at it. So in this one, I did take out the Zone A. So as you can see, that net revenue over expenses highlighted down at the bottom is about $576,000, which is what we're facing here. Any comments on fire? I know we'll go back to the Zone A and we can see some of the options there to help this out. It's been suggested that we have a special meeting on our fire budget and look at options because we're going to have to, we'll be able to weather this. The other thing I want to point out is the Schedule A is estimated at top of range for all the employees. So it's always higher than it actually, the actuals will come. We'll pay for the actuals. So there is some room here from that 576,000. I could guess it would come down maybe 100,000 in that range.
So this table is not what's in our packet.
No, I changed it.
Okay.
What I told you at the beginning, I left in the Schedule A money in that. So that's why I wanted to definitely point this out that, the deficit is more if you're looking at just straight revenue minus Schedule A or Zone A, I'm sorry. Um,
And then my understanding is this isn't keep our coverage as high as we want it either. It's gonna, we have what coverage of 3 people,
and
not
reserve.
4.
Yeah, this keeps the reserve program going. Though that could be one of our budget savings is eliminating the reserve program.
Oh, I thought we were getting rid of that.
Well, it's still in this budget
Okay.
because we haven't gone and we haven't made that decision, but that's where we wanted to head. Like I said, I thought we would have another maybe 2 years before we're in this position, but given the escalation, that 25% bump or over 700,000, we find ourselves in a difficult situation. We do have lots of money in reserve, so it's not like we're teetering here. I did want to note down at the bottom there, I did put in, we do have $3.13 million in unassigned cash, which is above and beyond what we have in our reserve accounts here. But we will need to do something. We'll need to respond rather quickly. I've been working on what would be needed in an increase in the special fire tax, and I'm pretty close to having it ready for public, the board's review.
Yeah, I look forward to our meeting.
Yeah. Any questions on fire? We're in a tough spot.
Yeah, how quickly do we need to respond? Do we need to come up with a plan to make up that deficit?
Well, like I said, we can weather that, 576,000, but we can't do that for multiple years. We can definitely do it for a year.
Okay.
It's been talked about, we could utilize our general contingency reserve, 583,200 there. That's what it's for. And we can,
General contingency, is that a Fund 301 general
yeah,
contingency?
you can see it right up
Okay.
there. So we do have that money to pull out of reserves to help us through this year, next year. And what I will do for the final is put that out as an option for the board to consider and show you what that looks like.
All right.
Here's a softball, Fund 400, again, just increases in cost allocation. Now 500, there's just a lot of moving parts to this one, so I'll try to go through them rather quickly. We have adjustments in personnel costs, wage increases, similar things to all the other funds. Personnel cost will be according to SLOCIA, and we do have a recommendation to increase our utilities systems managers as well. I'm recommending a decrease in our capital project plan, try to get caught up from the one this year, and I'll show you this in just a moment. And then, of course, if we decrease the cost allocation transfer, that has an impact. So the net increase with the recommendations is about $41,000. Our capital outlay budget does go down by $673,000. I'll show you the numbers, how that works. We're still at a $2 million capital plan recommended for next year. And the transfers would go down a little over 27,000 when compared to last fiscal year. Revenues, we're projecting will increase just over 2%, but that's pending our Prop 218 rate increase recommendation. It does include 50,000 contribution from Zone A that was agreed upon during the rate analysis. And it also includes the connection of the middle school to recycled water, which will decrease our revenue slightly there. Just some of the numbers, salaries will increase by 3.6%, but the bigger increase is actually due to the medical insurance, CalPERS, retirement contributions, and some of those other costs associated with personnel. Then, like I said, we'll have a COLA for the water crew and utility billing special of 3%, and then a recommendation for the utility systems manager of 2.5%. And this is how it lays out. This is just kind of a review, so we don't need to go through the object level again. I wanted to talk about the capital plan. On the top is our current fiscal year capital plan. My best guess at this point is we'll only make it through about $1.1 million of it. So we have some big ticket items that will carry over, including the SCADA project, completion of the program Seawell and the valve replacement program. So as you can see, and we'll add in the heavy equipment storage structure, which we hope we can actually do with the Habitat Conservation Plan question still, and the phase 1 of the water office yard. So we're still at a little over $2 million for that capital plan. There'll be a public comment period. So we still have a $1.3 million deficit indicated down there, and we'll be looking at how we are more transparent in moving funds out of our reserves, but we do have a lot of unassigned cash as well here.
Yeah, we have bonds maturing too, so.
Right. So yeah, I'm not really worried about cash flow, but we want to make sure something's going on tonight. Let's hold on. So anyway, the water fund is in great shape. You know, we have a lot of expenditures coming up, but I don't think we have any problems meeting those. So wastewater, moving on to Fund 600, unless there's any other comments on Fund 500.
Don't see any?
Okay. This is really very straightforward. There's just some minimal cost increases associated with US bank fees and our consultant NBS, who manages the actual collection of the bond money or the assessment money. So there's just very little change here. So we'll move on over to solid waste. We were able to reduce some line items. We're getting a better sense of what we're needing money for. We will be doing a large contribution to the general contingency reserve per our policies revisions. We will see some franchise fee revenue increase based on the increase that was just recently approved. And again, the cost allocation increase from this fund. So that looks like we estimate about $44,750 in added revenue. Services and supplies will go down about $27,500. Transfers will go up a little over 9,000, and then we'll hit the general contingency with 100,000 contribution. So this will top that one off, and we'll be solid there. So this is what the summary looks like in terms of, and it's basically just those numbers I rattled off to you just now. Any questions on solid waste?
No. I think we're good.
Okay. Drainage, this is pretty bare bones as well. We just have some, minor increases in insurance licenses, regulatory fees, the cost allocation increase. The budget impact is really minimal for the, $175 for the insurance and the other items. We still have to determine Zone A revenue, so that's kind of the unknown in the summary. The cost allocation will go up about $4,100, and it continues to pay back the interfund loan from Fund 500. So again, the revenue numbers, I highlighted those, and the bottom aren't relevant until we figure out what we're doing with the Zone A money, but just minor differences here.
Okay.
And then drainage reserves, we still have reserves, and this was the plan when we did the interfund loan, and we wanted to make sure we had money available for projects if needed. Okay, Parks and Rec. This is the other one we'll need to talk a little bit more about. Of course, we are requesting more funding for legal and consulting services associated with the acquisition of Sunnyside School, and then the transfers. Basically, looking for an increase in services and supplies, that's legal and consulting of a little over 58,000, and increases in the transfer of about 11,500. Because basically we'll have to decide how much we really want to allocate, or we have about $50,000 or $60,000 in this fiscal year. And so when we look at the Zone A transfers, historically, if we've spent money out of Fund 900, we've tried to replenish it. And so then that'll come into the conversation if we want to try to replenish it and then have money available to continue the effort. Where's that balance going to be? So if there's no really other questions, because basically that's the only, thing we're going to decide for, Parks and Rec budget. How much do we want to spend? So if we can go into our Zone A conversation, it might help solidify what we want to do in Fund 900. Does that make sense?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay. And we do have a reserve amount here. So Zone A property tax allocation. It's a designated tax allocation derived from property tax collected community-wide, and that's why we typically try to allocate it to things that will benefit the whole community. We do that during this process, and I will present 4 options, but I want to make sure these are for discussion purposes only, and that we can be as creative as you want to be on this. This is what we have for this fiscal year. We had about $317,000. And we kind of did an almost equal allocation between drainage and fire because of the drainage fund situation, Fund 800 situation, and then our commitment to our fire budget. And we did have the 50,000 for water because that was part of the rate plan we are just finishing up. And then we did not do anything for Parks and Rec. So keeping that in mind, we have about close to $331,000 of Zone A money. This option would kind of keep Parks and Rec and Fire about equal. Have the 50,000 for water, and then drainage would take a little more of a backseat to Parks and Rec and Fire. Kind of keep that one in mind, that it's kind of looking at priorities in a way that were similar to this fiscal year. Go ahead, Chris.
So how do you feel about drainage? Like we do drainage, say at the $50,000 level? I mean, like there's some funds in there, right? I mean.
Right, and we're probably at least 2 years out before we're gonna have to do a big project up at Cabrillo. And we don't know if FEMA money, Cal OES money is going to come through. So it's been kind of, let's keep pushing some money there. So let me keep going through here, and you can see I kind of changed up.
I'll try to not jump ahead. I have an opinion already, but go ahead.
So this one kind of takes, drainage down, keeps the water, makes fire more important, but still recognizes, the money that we've spent this year in drainage and gives us some money for the upcoming fiscal year. This one kind of flips it. We're looking more at Parks and Rec. We take fire down to a lesser degree. And with any of these, we've kind of committed to the water in the analysis. If we move that money, we'll be putting ourselves in a deficit or not meeting our goals, revenue goals. But drainage, we could decrease. And then finally, this one just throws all the money basically at Parks and Rec and keeps just a little bit of money going to the others.
I feel like we're doing planning, but I don't think we need to throw lots of money at Parks and Rec this next year.
Well, and this was just really, again, this is for discussion only.
Okay.
I don't know if any of these are close. We can go through them really quick again. This is the balanced. We could move, like you said, drainage could go down if we don't feel we want to this next fiscal year hit that fund.
I sense a lot of work being put into drainage in the future,
Yeah.
personally. So I don't think we should minimize that. Parks and Rec might even be a bit high, but I don't know.
Well, I was wondering about the Parks and Rec one myself. Is that thinking about the Sunnyside situation and
That it is totally Sunnyside.
okay,
You know.
because it sounds like we're gonna need as much as we can put into that to make that happen. I don't know where we stand right now as far as negotiations have gone as far.
Yeah, and I'll talk about that a little bit later in my GM report, but you know, we'll get into that, and it's going to, you know, given the Parks and Rec and fire situation, you know, and drainage, I mean, I don't want to, again, minimize drainage, but we have some decisions to make, and we only have this year $331,000 of discretionary money.
Right. I guess I feel like, when we've needed drainage, we shift more into drainage, and I'm not sure we need it this year, but fire and Parks and Rec, that's where I'm leaning on putting a lot of the money, but.
I guess, the Sunnyside discussion is going to lead to what our needs in Parks and Rec are, which kind of helps us decide the Zone A allocation. So some kind of idea. We've got more Wallace Group work coming
Mhm.
that we need to fund. We've got Craig's
Legal,
time.
Cap legal, yeah.
Yeah.
And it's gonna, we
I
see
mean, do
it's
we have some kind of ballpark about what we think we need for that?
not really, because there's so many unknowns, you know.
Right now, we're just like funding Wallace to get plans and. you
Well,
know,
and
right?
their involvement is slowing down.
Okay.
We had a big push to pull off that, you know, town hall meeting. And now they're just crunching numbers. And so their cost, we've pretty much burned through the cost for them. There'll be probably another 10 to 20,000.
Okay, so maybe they don't need 100,000.
But, you know, we're moving into negotiations and, you know, Craig and his team are crucial to that part, but we don't know how much time that's going to take. And keep in mind, you know, going back to, we do have money. And I didn't put the unallocated, unassigned money here, but there's about $350,000 in Parks and
good.
Rec. It's a little less than that, I think, but.
Well, pool money, right? I mean, we've always had kind of a policy of let's try and keep that.
But
And now I think until the community decides.
Right. And what I'm saying is if we underestimate, we still have this money.
Yes.
And we can replenish it again at another point in time is what I'm saying. Yeah.
I guess in terms of fire, almost seems like the needs are such that is any Zone A money gonna be enough to make a difference?
Yeah, even if we used all the zone aid money, it's
Yeah.
not enough.
Yeah, I think on that, like Zone A stuff might, funding might not be most appropriately spent on fire. We're gonna have to find another way to finance fire, and the Zone A property tax allocation might be better used elsewhere. I'm leaning
I
towards
can't
Parks and Rec and
disagree with you. I
drainage.
mean, you know, like you said, we could throw 100,000 at fire and we're still, you know, in the hole.
Yeah, we're still probably gonna look at an increase in fire tax.
Oh, yeah, that's a given. And we'll be talking about more about that probably at a special session.
Maybe a
meeting.
year from now, 2 years from now,
No, probably a year max.
putting it to the community.
Yeah.
Okay, okay.
But I'm okay with, I mean, historically, we have used this money to fund fire because it's a community-wide,
yes.
good, community-wide benefit. So I'm kind of okay with keeping
Because,
it.
okay, if you're thinking this is one way, this is kind of almost 50-50 Parks and Rec and fire, or are you thinking something more like that?
Oh, me personally?
Well, no, I'm just trying to
Oh, okay.
see if we can guide ourselves to a place. What you can say is not say this option, but you can tell me what your priorities are, and I will create an option if
Right.
needed for the final.
So I'm leaning towards like something more like the option 1 and 2. I wasn't really leaning towards putting that much money into Parks and Rec. I mean, we'll probably need to do fundraising, but that's a later stage. But I mean, I guess I don't know what the lawyer requirement is, because I mean, we definitely we're facilitating, and I'm not sure how much that costs, but.
Well, it depends, really depends if we come to an agreement with the school district quickly or not.
Okay. So how is everyone else feeling about our choices?
I feel like water is pretty self-sustaining, and the less that's from from zone A that's used for water, the better, the more we can use that money elsewhere. Same with fire, at least coming up in the future. Not saying we get rid of it entirely, but I think Parks and Rec, we have a lot of ambition there. And drainage, I see a lot of potential big expensive projects in drainage in the future. So I think those would be my two priorities.
So
But
you're leaning
I'm a new board
towards,
member, so I trust your experience a little bit
So
more than
what
mine.
were your priorities, Tom? I mean,
more drainage, and I
Drainage.
hear that.
Drainage and Parks and Rec.
But I think, we've kind of agreed that our resources are like Team and Water does a lot of work for the whole community so that we're okay with taking that 50,000. I think
yeah,
that's kind of,
yeah.
we've been,
Defend that.
we've been weaning ourselves off, but I think that's a level that we like is actually
Keep the
keep
50
it at the
yeah,
50 on the water.
Water. yeah.
PMC, we've got to support it.
Yeah. Because we do a lot of work for the whole community.
Mhm.
But I hear you. I could,
It's our
you
bread and
could,
butter
you could
thing.
convince me to do more in drainage.
The only reason I think less from zone A specifically is because we have a lot of funding sources in water already that we could tweak in the future to wean us further off zone A. As it stands right now, I think it's fine. I think there's just more potential for that money to be better utilized elsewhere, given where we get money from and where we're able to get money from.
Okay. All right, where are you guys?
Well, I was initially looking at option 3, but I'm thinking to roll back maybe the Parks and Rec a little bit. Options 1 and 2 still give us some pretty solid funding there.
Richard, what are you thinking?
I'm liking option 2. Yeah, because again, the Park and Rec, we still, as we've said, don't really know where that's gonna end up. But
And some to drainage there. And fire could always use our support. Yeah, 2's a good one.
yeah,
Does anyone want to tweak it at all?
I mean, like, go 125,000 for Parks and Rec.
Well, you have public comment, we should probably take it.
We're definitely gonna have to, but
Okay, all right, let's open it up for public comment then.
If you're online, if you're in the boardroom, come to the podium. All right, Julie or Jeff, you are allowed to talk.
Good evening, Julie Tacker. Can you hear me?
Hi,
Mhm.
Julie.
yes.
Hi. I am a former board member. I'm also a former member of the Emergency Services Committee for 14 years. And in light of the conversation you just had before the budget, I am in favor of the ad valorem property tax, that is your Zone A money, going to as much to fire as possible. Because of the increased costs associated with the CAL FIRE contract, your new budget defers things that we wanted. And to defer and defund by taking this revenue away from fire, I think is a disservice to the most vital service that you do provide for the entire community. When I was a board member, we fought very hard. Most of the ad valorem property tax was going to water, and we fought very hard to try to equalize that. And it was some years after I got off the board that it actually started happening. And I really appreciate the work of the boards after me that started to wean water from that allocation. I understand that Ron's efforts for the community-wide water issues and the $50,000, while I still would like to see that reduced to water, I think it's okay this time. And then with regard to the Parks and Rec, that is not pool money. It never was pool money. I'm tired of that being characterized as pool money because it wasn't. It was a ballot measure for parks and recreation, $15 a house per year for 1 year. And that money was rolled into the district after the district was formed. That money was initially was collected by the county. So let's not characterize it that way because people still think that we're supposed to get a pool with $300,000 and that doesn't even pave a parking lot. So that is not going to cover the cost of a pool. But that there's some $350,000 there now, there really is not a need to fund it through the Zone A money. It's really, I think, a little reckless to try to add more money to parks when we don't know what the bandwidth of the community
Thanks, Julie. Thanks for the clarification.
is for the cost of a fire tax.
pool money too.
You had pushback on the water rate increase.
She can't hear.
Oh, you're welcome. And I'm happy to answer other questions. So I'm always available.
Oh, thank you. Any other comments?
There's no more online.
Did you have a comment or question? Oh, please.
I pledge to stop using pool money.
It's a pool of money.
Yeah.
My name is Ashley and I have a couple questions regarding water, if someone could just answer them. What is COLA and what is SCADA?
Oh, is that all?
No, do you want me, I have.
Keep going.
Other,
Yeah,
okay.
keep You got going. 3
Okay, so
minutes.
what is COLA, what is SCADA, and then as far as, and if someone could please define where Zone A money, where that comes from for me, I'm new to this. But as far as Parks and Rec, I hope that Parks and Rec isn't being considered Sunnyside, because regardless if Sunnyside, the acquisition of that happens or not, Los Osos still needs a park. So I would urge you to please allocate money to Parks and Rec so that we have that for whatever opportunity arises for green space for Los Osos. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, I'll close public comment and I'll let Ron answer those
Yes,
questions.
COLA is cost of living increase. Basically, typically it's based on CPI or what we've negotiated with our union.
What's CPI?
It's
Consumer price
Consumer
index?
price index.
Thank you.
One acronym leads to another.
Yeah, sorry, as soon as I said that, I go, oh, I probably should have said. Anyway, and SCADA is basically, I don't even think I can remember all the words, what the acronym stands for word-wise, but basically it's the way computers, how a computer system can communicate from our wells to our tanks, and it monitors everything so the operators can see real time what is going on in certain wells or tanks. So it's a communication system for our water distribution.
Yeah, I had to look that up myself because I didn't know. Supervisory control and data acquisition.
There you go. Thank you, Rich.
Yeah, no problem.
And ours is in the Stone
Which is
Age
clear
right
as
now,
mud.
so.
Mhm.
And then defining the Zone A money. I
Oh,
believe it's
Zone A
property
money.
tax money. We get some of our property tax money back.
Going back to the beginning of the district, there's different zones were created by the county to fund certain things. For instance, Zone B money funds our fire department, but it's collected on every parcel. Zone A was actually used by the county to run the water system down that we now have, down mostly in Baywood and the number streets. But again, it's collected by every parcel. So these different zone monies were created by the county, and when we incorporated into or formed the CSD, they migrated over to help us fund our programs.
Thanks for your questions. All right.
Those are very good questions.
Are there other zones besides A and B or
D?
Yeah, there's F, J.
no? Is there kind of a map or an explanation on our site somewhere about what
I
the
don't know
zone?
if we have it on ours. I don't think so on our site. Some of those are very small buckets of money that come in, like 9,000 or, just really small amounts. they were associated with Vista de Oro and Bay Ridge when those were septic maintenance districts.
Hmm.
And anyway, and now those are just lighting districts. Anyway, we can go through the whole story sometime.
Okay.
Okay, so board, where are we leaning for options?
What page are the options on? In our packet?
This is 4A-2. It's right after this blue sheet and then flip it one page and there's the options.
Ah, beautiful.
So I'm kind of hearing we're somewhere around the option 2.
I'm looking at option 2.
Yeah.
I'm leaning slightly towards option 1, but I do like option 2. Just because I have a paranoia about drainage becoming an issue.
No, FEMA's gonna reimburse 100%.
Exactly.
Yeah, I feel like drainage is Parks and Rec is an issue now or something we're working on now. And drainage, we can add to it next year.
All right.
I mean,
Sounds like a good plan.
Okay.
we did
so
last year.
We will
We put a
go,
lot of money in drainage. All
we'll go with option 2.
right, does anyone want to make a motion then? Recommendation?
You have your direction from the board?
I've checked them off.
Let's see, okay.
Provided
Okay, there we go.
direction,
There we
reviewed
go.
and commented. We did our zone A. So
All right.
we just need to have the board set the public hearing date.
I move that the board set the date for the public hearing for the adoption of fiscal year 2025-26 budget for June 5th, 2025. We provided direction on proposed cost allocation changes. We've accepted your recommendations. I think we've reviewed and commented on each budget item, and option 2 seems to be our favorite for Zone A property tax.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll second that.
And then do we need roll call? No, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay. Wonderful. We're now open for public comments, not in the agenda.
If you're online, please raise your hand. There's none online.
None on the board. Okay. General manager report?
Yes. I put in a kind of a summary for people that read my report, where we're at with Sunnyside School in terms of what we've done and where we're at currently. What I wanted to get down to is that, you know, our legal team, Craig and his associate, have met with the school district 2 times now. It's kind of laying the groundwork for us to get into negotiations. We'll be submitting a letter of interest here in a couple of weeks. The 16th, I believe, is the day. And then we'll start our sit-down conversations with the school district. On a parallel track, the project team, which has been myself and members from LOCAC, Deborah Howe and Trish Bartel, have been working with another group that is formed. Jerry Freiberg from our finance committee is doing a community interest group. They've held a couple of meetings, and so we've been supporting that. And that purpose of that group is to support us. So that's a very dynamic group, which is getting underway. There is a website by sunnysideschool.com that is actually run by Gary. We're hoping to have a second town hall meeting in January, probably the way things are going.
June.
Or, I'm sorry, June.
That's
Does
okay.
start with the J.
Started with the J.
Yeah. Probably be middle of June, but we'll have more information, and we're waiting to have better cost numbers, cost estimations, to really see where we stand on that. So the combination of getting the cost information together and initiating discussions with the school district are our main priorities right now. I also did want to bring up, hadn't talked about the water resiliency intertie project over to the State Water Project by Highway 1 in South Bay. I've been bugging Congressman Carvajal's office monthly to get updates. After the last one, they agreed to reach out directly to the Army Corps engineer who will actually be administering the money once it's appropriated. So I did include a letter. It was like probably a week after I talked with their staff that Congressman Carvajal signed an office specifically on our project to the Army Corps, encouraging that it move forward and be funded. So at least we have a glimmer of hope there. We'll see what happens. That's all I had.
And then I want to add, like Gary was saying, they're working on, he was talking to, was it Cayucas, people that raise money for the pier about
And
how
that's
they
all.
raise money. So that's what he's working on. It sounded very exciting.
Yes.
Okay, so Parks and Rec, was there a meeting?
There was a meeting. We just basically talked about Sunnyside School. We've been keeping the committee up to date. So we've been actually having monthly meetings.
Okay, just gearing up. Utility Advisory Committee.
Imagine that. We talked about the budget. Compared to the budget.
And the Finance Committee, we also discussed the budget. They recommended approval of the warrant register and to receive and file the financial reports. Pretty good meeting. And no ESAC. Was there a Basin Management Committee?
Yes, there was.
No.
We got an early look at the monitoring results, most recent monitoring results, and basically we're in a holding pattern waiting for the transient model to come forward. And I think the baseline projections will be coming that June meeting.
Okay.
I think we're going to meet in May still, but June is when I'm looking for the first information. And then again, it'll take months after that to run the different scenarios with different probably weather projections, recycled water use here, there, how it all affects the sustainable yield. So I expect the next couple meetings to be very exciting.
Okay.
And the annual report will be at the May meeting, draft
that's
annual
right.
report.
All right. Thank you. I don't believe we had any previously asked questions. So, does anyone want to pull anything from the consent agenda? All right, not seeing anything pulled. I will take public comments for items on the administrative and committee reports
If
and
you're
the
on,
consent agenda.
so sorry. If you're online, please raise your hand.
I paused.
There's no public comment online.
All right, and then the boardroom. Oh, go ahead.
Yep.
Yes, please. Sorry.
Hi again. As far as the Sunnyside cost analysis goes, at the first town hall meeting, I think a lot of people were hoping there would be some cost analysis there, and it's been nearly 5 weeks now. So I'm curious, who is it specifically that's working on that? Is that contracted out? Is it LOCAC? Is it Los Osos, CSD? All of those factors, just kind of what's holding that up and when we anticipate that to be made public? Thank you.
Great question.
Good question. We had a meeting with Wallace Group, our consultant, on Tuesday. We saw the baseline costs for improvements, and they're working on the ongoing and maintenance costs, which they should have to us, I think by the end of next week. So we'll have all the information on maintenance, ongoing maintenance and baseline improvements by the end of next week. And that's trying to have it for the next stakeholder meeting.
Okay. All right, we did this item, right?
Yeah, we just need a motion to approve.
Right.
I'll move to approve the consent agenda.
I'll second that.
And then do we need roll call or just a voice vote? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Any future agenda items?
Yeah, I think we should put on the front burner looking for assistant for Ron. I know it's something that we've been talking about a lot, and I think we should start making it reality if it's possible, or at least discuss if it is in fact something that we should do at the moment.
All right, I'm in favor of that.
Sounds like a Matthew item.
Yeah, I know. I'm mad that he's not here. I was like,
Yeah,
he'd definitely
all
back me
over it.
up.
Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was wondering, going back to the fire thing and Tom, you were talking about, the letter writing stuff. I was wondering if we could do a boilerplate here, to make it easier for the people to send in a letter. I think that is a stumbling block for a lot of people, is they don't either have the time or don't think they're wordy enough or whatever to actually form a letter. And maybe if we did it here, and put it on our site that, hey, there is a letter available if you'd like it, and all you have to do is, fill in the blanks and sign it.
I think it's a fantastic idea if that's something that is within our like area of
Purview.
purview.
Yeah, I
Shame
don't-
that
I don't know that we should be pushing. I think it's better when it's like grassroots
Mm.
rather than
Mm.
us kind of having a,
It seems to me that there's some pretty expressive people. The letters that I've seen are very thoughtful. And I think bundling those, our role maybe should be to bundle those and then forward them to our elected representatives with perhaps the suggestion that the one common thread here seems to be a move from state criteria to local criteria. Then that should be maybe the extent of our involvement. I think I'd like that better. But
Yeah.
I definitely would put it on the website and say, we're going to send all the letters sent to us by such and such a date to Don Addis, to Mr. Laird.
Well, maybe we can have some of the letters we received.
Yeah,
You
we've
know,
got a ton already.
Right, and on that
Well,
way, we're not making or having a template, but it gives them the idea.
There you go.
Right.
There you
that
go.
Okay,
copy.
yeah,
Oh.
that
The letters
give an
submitted.
idea
That's
what
better.
what to put in.
Yeah.
then people can.
And I have
concur.
a pretty good relationship with Assemblywoman Addis and State Senator Laird. So I think once we decide when to send that bundle, I can definitely meet with them.
Okay, great.
Sounds good.
if anyone were still here from the first agenda item, I'm sure they'd be very excited to hear that.
Okay, any closing board member comments?
This is one that maybe I should have popped in during 6J. I got on a little yellow school bus today and took a day tour of Capslo sites. We went to Forty Prado, the health clinic up by Cal Poly, up to Paso Robles to the adult daycare center, Head Start programs, all of which are marvelous investments in the community that I hope don't go away. So I would like to urge people to stay tuned. Head Start, maybe on the chopping block, those kind of things that affect our communities. So everybody pay attention because they're just wonderful. I think the adult daycare in Paso is the only one in the county. People come up from Rio Grande and are dropped off there to give their caregivers a day off, that kind of thing. Certainly was a good day for me. I always enjoy doing that kind of.
All right, thanks for the update, and that's a great comment. All right, anyone else? All right, I will adjourn this meeting. Thanks everyone for coming.
Thank you.